Hello and welcome, my name is ThatCatDeveloper and this is the second episode in our moderation system series where we build a moderation system with the C# REST API backend. Now we're finally starting to build our API, so we're going to need to do a few things before we can actually start writing code. To build anything in C# you need to have an ID, or in other words, software that you can compile code on, or actually just code on. It's called an integrated development environment, and we're going to be using Visual Studio for this series. I believe Visual Studio is our best pick because it's really good with C#. Now, go to this URL and let's search it. And here you open this website where you see download. So you need to install Visual Studio, this one. You do the community version because the other ones are paid and we don't really need the features there. And click it and you'll see a new download. Now, when you download it, it's going to open an installer, just like here. Let me show it to you. Open the file and it's going to ask you a few things. Just click yes, continue. As you can see, I already have the installer, so it's going to open this when you install. Now there should be an install button right here. Click on it and it's going to show you this pop-up. Now here, these are all of the available workloads in Visual Studio. Now there are a lot of them because Visual Studio is a really powerful tool, but we only need one of them, which is the ASP.NET Core, ASP.NET and standards-based web technologies. Now click this and click install. You need to wait a little bit because Visual Studio is a really heavy application, so it will take certainly some gigabytes. But once you've done, you can click launch and it launches it from here. Now, in here what you can do, which we actually need to do, is create our project. So let's do that. Click on the create a new project and it's going to give you a lot of options here, but we need to search for one specific thing, which is the ASP.NET Web API. This is what we need. So let's click it and let's give it a name. We're going to call it Roblox Moderation API. And after we've done that, we can click create and it's going to ask us about what we want to do with it. Do we want authentication? Keep it as this. That's all we need. This creates a boilerplate web API project. So let's just open it by clicking create, and it's going to take up some time, so let's just give it a moment. Now this is how it looks at the first time. You should see this exact layout, which I'll explain to you what's going on in it, but we need to clean up our boilerplate because there is some test code that has been left too. So first we have this weather forecast, which you can delete by clicking the delete button or right click and delete. After that we can go to our controller and we're going to delete this controller and our controllers full. Actually no, we're not going to delete, we're going to rename it and call it moderation controllers. Now let's just add a really simple, this is our program CS file, which is where our application starts. We don't need to touch anything here, so let's create a test endpoint. Now what an endpoint is, it's basically, like I said in the previous video, you have a menu. Endpoint is a food item. So let's click on add and let's create a new controller. And we're going to call our controller, let's give it a simple name, moderation controller. Yeah, it's really simple. This is how it should look like. We have essentially just a really simple controller. Now it should be controller base here, because when we create a new controller, it creates a controller with view support, which we don't need, and you don't need to know what that is. So after we do that, we also need to add a few annotations. These are called annotations. We need to say that it's an API controller, which indicates that the type and all derived types are used to serve HTTP API responses. And also we're going to add our root, which is just going to be controller. Yeah, like that. Great. Now, let's do a simple ping. So let's replace here and say ping, and we're going to return an OK. Now, you need to know about the statuses. You maybe have heard of the 404 error. Essentially, this is what an HTTP request returns. It returns a result, which is one of the basic types of responses. So for now, we're going to return OK, because an OK means that everything has went through correctly. And we're going to call this route an HTTP getter, because we get information from it. And we're going to call it ping. Really simple. And then we're going to return OK with the message in it, pong. It's a really simple test. So let's actually test it. To test these, you click on this little icon, the green arrow, and give it some time to build. A build means it compiles the code for the very first time. And as you can see, we have a simple API. Now, when you click here and click to try it out, you can see it returns a pong. So essentially it works. You can also test this with external features like Postman, which I currently don't have, or you can also check them with curl. So let's try doing that. We're going to write this. This is our route. So just change it to whatever the number is here. So it should be localhost whatever this number is here /moderation/ping. And as you can see, it returns pong, which means it successfully works. So let's do a recap of what we did. We installed Visual Studio, we created a new web API project, we cleaned the boilerplate out of our Visual Studio project, and then we created our first get endpoint with /ping. Now we're ready to handle real moderation data, which will happen in the next video. So in the next episode we'll build a real moderation model and endpoint where we can send warnings and bans using post requests. After that, we'll lock it down with API key security, and that's in the next steps what we're going to do. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you're building alone. That's it for me, and I wish you a really good day.